The theory of evolution has become a fundamental belief of many of those who reject God as the creator of the universe. It's become a cornerstone of modern biological science and is taught as virtual fact in educational institutions in much of the world. The Bible, however, teaches us humanity did not evolve from microorganisms or simple life forms over millions of years. Instead, it teaches that God created the first two humans and all other life forms wholly formed from the beginning. As believers, we don't accept evolution as truth. But unfortunately, evolution has been embraced by much of the world, with very dark consequences. To explore this, let's first look at the full title of Charles Darwin's book that introduced these ideas to the world. On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favoured Races in the Struggle for Life. The title suggests that life originated from natural processes rather than God, and that the purpose of life for all living beings is to ensure the survival and reproduction of their species or group, even at the expense of others. And that some races of humanity are by nature favoured in the struggle and therefore destined to be preserved. The moral and spiritual implications of these ideas are profound. Crediting purely natural processes for the development of living creatures implies that there is no God and no afterlife. This would mean that there's no moral lawgiver independent of ourselves. We're then each free to come up with our own morality. If there's no higher moral authority, then there can be no unified moral standard among humanity. This leads to deep divisions, with each insisting that their viewpoint is the right one. If one nation, for instance, decides to invade and slaughter the citizens of another, for whatever moral reasons they feel justifies their actions, who can argue with them? And we would have no reason to be outraged because invading another nation would simply be viewed as a justifiable product of our natural impulses to survive and reproduce. Isn't that what we're seeing in the world today? Deep divisions between nations, ethnic groups, and ideological adversaries? And if there's no divine justice, the evildoers who invaded and got away with it in this life would never face eternal justice. The theory of evolution diminishes our free will because we would be hardwired for no other purpose than to do whatever it takes to survive and reproduce. While many of us might aspire to more noble and sacrificial endeavours, ultimately we'll have to yield to our default purpose and put ourselves above others, even if that means harming them in some way. World-famous evolutionary biologist and atheist apologist Richard Dawkins touched on this in his book, The Selfish Gene, where he argued that human behaviour is guided by our genetic makeup. He wrote, "We are survival machines, robot vehicles blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes. It is as though we're possessed by the spirit of our DNA. We are its servants, compelled to obey it and dance to its music." Contrary to the Bible, evolution suggests that humans have no unique status above any other creature, placing humanity on the same level as the animal kingdom. Animals live by the survival of the fittest principle. They stalk and devour each other. Even within the same species, animals display such behavior through dominance, social hierarchies, mating competitions, and vying for food and territory. If we're inherently no different than other creatures, then we're justified in acting in a similar manner to them. Darwin's theory has produced catastrophic consequences in the world, whether he foresaw them or not. Hitler, for instance, was no doubt influenced by Darwinism. British historian Alan Bullock, in his book called Hitler, A Study on Tyranny, had this to say about Darwin's influence on the German dictator. In Hitler's eyes, Christianity was a religion fit only for slaves. he detested its ethics in particular. Its teaching, he declared, was a rebellion against the natural law of selection by struggle and the survival of the fittest. Believing that Germans or Aryans were a superior master race, Hitler acted upon his Darwinian influences with horrific results. Darwin's theory also encourages racism. The title of his book, Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, implies that some races are favored by natural selection to be preserved, while others are not. Darwin's own writings were infused with racist ideas. In his book, The Descent of Man, he wrote, "At some future period, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world." No doubt Hitler, the slave traders, and oppressive colonizers were emboldened by Darwin's teachings. Hitler wasn't alone in embracing Darwin-inspired eugenist ideas. Margaret Sanger, the founder of US-based abortion provider Planned Parenthood, was another. Sanger promoted birth control, forced sterilizations, and infanticide as a means of selective reproduction, which aimed to control and reduce the population of those she and others deemed unfit, such as African Americans and disabled infants. Listen to these disturbing quotes from her writings. "The most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. As they say, ideas have consequences. By replacing God as the creator of humanity with a purely naturalistic, unguided process, Darwin strips humanity of its connection with the Almighty, the one to whom we are accountable. The Bible warns us about misguided scientists like Darwin. Romans 1:21 and 22. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools." And regarding their so-called scientific teaching, we should heed the advice of Paul to his understudy Timothy. 1 Timothy 6:20 and 21. "O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith." Thankfully, we are created by a loving God, and our ultimate purpose in life is to love Him and others as we love ourselves. What a hopeful and life-giving contrast to the bleakness of the Darwinian principle of survival of the fittest. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. See you next time. Bye.